Hello, everyone. I think I just got the okay to start. This is really loud. Exactly. Thank you for that. I haven't even said anything. Well, I did. Welcome, everyone, to Data Binding in 2015, Reactive Programming in Firebase. I could have also just called this a pragmatic approach to reactive programming. And basically, the whole point of this talk is talk a little bit about RX. How many of you guys are familiar with RX? A couple. And then, how many of you guys are familiar with Firebase? Hopefully a couple as well. We're going to do a little compare and contrast, and then we're going to do a little bit of live code. So my name is Mike McDonald. I'm an engineer at Firebase, which is a company that was acquired by Google about a year ago. All of the Twitter handles that are used to reach me or people like me are down at the bottom. We have a couple other folks, Max, Johnny, and Frank. We're all wearing these obnoxious yellow t-shirts. We'll be here for the rest of the day today and all day tomorrow. We'd love to talk to you. Quick agenda before we get started. A brief intro to RX. So we saw about maybe half the hands went up for understanding of what RX is. We're going to talk about how Firebase is actually very similar to RX, and some of the paradigms used are relatively similar. We're going to do live coding. I love live coding. I know I've talked to a lot of people here, and they're like, oh, live coding is dangerous. I like to live dangerously. So we're going to go ahead and build an app, and ideally, it's going to be about 5 lines of code when we're done. So we're going to go ahead and play a little code golf. And lastly, we're going to talk about some new goodies in Marshmallow that make this even better and really help us get down to kind of our 5 lines of code in an app. So we're going to start quickly, as I mentioned, with a brief intro to RX. RX is usually described in very long, complicated sentences using very long, complicated words, observables and futures and all these crazy things. So we're going to go ahead and just do a quick couple definitions so we're all on the same page. Observables are just event producers. You can think of RX as it's programming with asynchronous streams, which I realize sounds more complicated now than I said it. But the observables just go ahead and produce those asynchronous events. Those things are then consumed by subscribers. So you can imagine some API kicks out observable or kicks out events. You go ahead and, as a client, subscribe to those events. And then lastly, you can go ahead and use operators to transform the events that are coming out and going to the subscribers. So you guys may be or may be familiar with things like filters, where you can go ahead and say, hey, only give me things that are greater than something else or of a certain type. Or maps, where you can go ahead and actually transform the data from one input to another. Maybe aggregation using reduce to do summation or count, similar things. There are a number of those. Typically, you want to wonder, though, where do those event streams come from? It's great to say, and you always see in the examples, in the marble diagram, it's just like an arrow coming off from the left. Where is that arrow coming from? And typically, it's some API. And as an application developer, especially if you don't already have giant infrastructure built up, you have to go ahead and build that before you can even start building your app. So the app server and the database, that's your LAMP stack or your mean stack. And I know that whenever I start talking about servers at mobile conferences, people's eyes just totally glaze over. So the goal is, this is the only slide that you should ever have to think about a server on, and we want to get rid of this. So typically when you're interacting with that, you go ahead and create your observable, and you have to go ahead and pull some REST endpoint to go ahead and get that asynchronous stream of events, which is why we showed those kind of other 2 servers on how you get your data to your mobile client in order to do anything interesting with it. So in our observable wraps that API and produces the event stream, which then you can go ahead, do your operations, your filters, your maps, and then eventually subscribe and bind that to whatever view you're using. So when you're building an app using that, you go ahead, you have your observables, you have your subscribers, and then you bind them to your views. And it's a very kind of unidirectional flow. Your observers will go ahead and get bound to your subscribers will bind to your observables using some chain of operations, 0 or more, and then that will go ahead and bind out to your view. Again, that's one way. Then getting back, it's a different path, right? It's one way out to your view, and then I went ahead and said hashtag the cloud. That could be some API, that could be some other server that you've set up, and then your observable will go ahead and interact, kind of getting either pulling whatever cloud source, whatever API, to get more events. We think we can do better than that, though, because in this model, RX is great, but the issue is getting that observable and dealing with that to get that nice flow. So that's kind of the introduction to Firebase. Firebase, what it is a powerful platform for building mobile applications. And we go ahead and simplify that stack. We can essentially become that observable right off the bat. It's really due to the fact that we are push-oriented versus pull-oriented. You don't pull Firebase. You go ahead and, as a client, you subscribe to a Firebase reference and say, hey, reference, whenever my data changes, give me those events. And we notify you of those events. This allows you to develop really, really quickly because you've offloaded all of that application server management to us, and you've gotten this beautiful RX-like event source model to program against. So this is just kind of a nice GIF. I really like this one because it illustrates, you go ahead, one client will go ahead and when they write up to the cloud, we push those event streams back down to the interested clients. And then those clients can go ahead and run kind of a very similar unidirectional stream to what we were talking about earlier. And this is what that same kind of observable code would look like in Firebase. So what we do is we go ahead and we create a reference to our Firebase instance. And that reference is basically just a cold observable. For you guys who are familiar with that concept, when you go ahead and attach a child listener, we then start synchronizing events and sending that event stream down to you. So you kind of get, from the dawn of time, you start getting those different events. And so this child event listener, you go ahead and see on child added. That would be very similar to the subscriber on next. So you go ahead and that is the next event that is coming down the pipe. And the on canceled would again be kind of the subscriber's on error method. When that would go ahead and fire, it throws some error that would go ahead and signal, hey, this stream is dead. And so what does that look like in terms of the application architecture? By the way, we're going to live code this, so that's why we're kind of building up to this. This is a pattern called CQRS. Has anyone heard of that? Command Query Responsibility Segregation. And it's basically just exactly that. You separate your commands from your queries. So your query goes ahead and takes the data and pulls it one way, and then your commands go a separate way. So in this, we're going ahead and taking Firebase and adding that child listener, which is essentially just taking the observable, which is Firebase, putting it through some transform, in this case, essentially a filter to say, I only want certain child events, and then the model is subscribing to those changes. That can then propagate out to our views. And again, we have that nice unidirectional kind of RX flow out. And then, whoopsies, on the way back, we just go ahead and set the value. And unlike RX, where you'd have to go out to the cloud and then your observable is going to have to go ahead and pull, you can just go straight back to Firebase, and then those events can propagate kind of unidirectionally back out to our views. So that's very, very nice because you get an immutable object going out one way, and then you can go ahead and mutate it going back the other way. So we'll go ahead and actually pause there and switch over to Android Studio. So like I said, I like to live dangerously. We are going to start a totally new project because I don't want you thinking that there is any magic in this. So we'll go ahead. We've got that. We're going to go ahead and run Lollipop, create a blank activity, call it MainActivity, sure. And we'll give Gradle a second. Make it big. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make kind of a simple list view that has chat messages in it. Chat is kind of our canonical demo because it's multi-tenant kind of inherently, and it's really easy to build because all we need is a list view. So we'll go ahead, change that to a list view, get rid of text, and we'll also call it list view. So I'll just go. There we go. So we've got that, and that's pretty much all we need in our layout. We will go ahead and switch over to the main activity. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just create kind of a bare bones thing, start populating it with our message class. We're going to go ahead and create one of those. And then we're going to talk about how Firebase can interact with that. So very quickly, at risk of boring everyone, I'm going to quickly get that together. Yes, that's the one that I want. And then, so mListView. So we've got that. And then the other things that we're going to need to do is we're going to have to go ahead and we'll just use an array adapter to go ahead and bind our model objects that we'll create in a second to our list view. So we need an array adapter, and then we're also going to need an array list. And we'll leave that for a second. So we have m messages is going to be our array list, and m adapter is going to be our adapter. And we'll go ahead and make that of type message. So first thing that we need to do, it's going to complain, hey, we can't find what message is. So we're going to go and create a message class. And this is just going to go ahead and wrap a name and some chunk of text. So quickly, we'll also go ahead and show off a couple nice Android Studio functions. So we're going to go ahead and create name, string text, and then I'm going to do Command N and make a constructor that takes both of them, and then I'm also going to do the same thing and create a constructor that takes neither of them. So we need those because we're going to go ahead and use some interesting kind of inflation through those in a minute. And then the other thing that we want to do is we just want to go ahead and do getters and setters for both of them. So I generated all of that. Android Studio is pretty nice about that. So that's our class. It's just constructor and then getters and setters on those two properties. But we've got that now, and we can go ahead and do messages is a new array list of message. So we've got that, and then we have to go ahead and do our adapter, which is going to be an array adapter that is this. We're going to use one of the built-in layouts. So if you guys have checked these out, we have simple line, our list item 2, and then it needs the messages array. And then we're going to go ahead, and everyone loves anonymous inner classes, so we're going to go ahead and do the getView method. And that's going to be what we're going to go ahead and populate on. And this is incredibly tedious, and I very much dislike doing it. But to show you, we have to go through a little bit of pain to show you how we're making it easier. So we're going to go ahead and try and get it. If it's null, we're going to go ahead and inflate it, and then we're going to return it after setting some properties on it. So quickly, I'm sorry if I'm running through this. The whole point is to show you how tedious it is to get up to this point, and then how much we can get rid of it again. So we go ahead, get our inflator, and we're going to go ahead and inflate. And we're going to do Android dot R layout simple list item 2. And so now we go ahead and we should have a row, and we can do the incredibly tedious task of doing all of the find view by IDs to go ahead and get the properties off of that. So let's go ahead, and we need a text view for our name. So name view, and that's going to be text view find view by ID our Android dot R dot layout dot, no, it's not that. Sorry, text ID, yeah, you're right. Text 1 and text 2, absolutely correct. And see, this is why it's a pain. So, and then we need another one that is going to be our actual text view, and do text view again row.find by ID. You guys are noticing there's a ton of boilerplate code here. So now we have to do the actual name view set text, and we're going to go ahead and we'll actually pull off the message. Messages get. Luckily, we just are given the position, so that's an easy one to get. And we're going to set the name view to message.getName and name view dot set text. Yeah, sorry. This is why I love live coding, right? I have a bunch of people who are going to correct my compiler errors. Messages dot get text. Perfect. And the last thing that I always forget to do, and I'm sure half of us in the room always forget to do, is ListView set adapter to madapter. So we can go ahead and just quickly, to prove that this works, dot add new message, and we'll go ahead and give it Mike and hello Droidcon. And I really should be using Genymotion because they're right next door, and this emulator is going to take forever. So we'll go ahead and give that a second. But we're expecting a single item in our list view with the message hello Droidcon. So we'll give that a second to think. And while it's doing that, as I've said several times now, ton of boilerplate code, and we also haven't even done any networking yet. So we want to go ahead and add Firebase to get Firebase to start populating the messages. So adding Firebase is pretty easy. We're just going to go ahead, and where did you go? Oopsies, not that one. It is going to be, sorry, this one. Open module settings, dependencies, and we can add Firebase as a library dependency. So again, this is partly just to show cool other features in Android Studio. We want to go ahead and add the Android client. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And then there were two other steps that we needed to do in order to make that happen. We'll give the simulator a second to wake up. There, proof, we got that working. Everyone, yeah, thank you for that. That's like Android 101. We're going to now take that a couple more levels. So I was halfway through that. We have to do two more things. So one of them is not so obvious, and one of them is pretty obvious. So I'm going to do the not so obvious one first. I actually have and Cradle PO. We have a bunch of package options that we need to exclude because we are not packaging as an R file yet. I really like saying that. So we have to do that. And then the last one, and this is something that I definitely always forget, we need the internet permission. Because Firebase does need the internet to work. So make sure that you do that. And then we're kind of ready to rock and roll. We can go back to our main activity, and we need some way of adding messages to our array. So what we're going to do is we're going to get Firebase, and in order to set it up, we need to go ahead and set the Android context. So that's kind of the only piece of boilerplate code that we have. And then the other thing that we need to do is we need to create a reference to our Firebase, which is what I said. It's basically an observable. We're going to go ahead and create something that we can observe, subscribe to that set of changes with our child event listeners, and then we're going to go ahead and populate our list with those messages that we're getting back. So new Firebase, and we're going to go ahead and give it the Droidcon 2015.firebase.io.com URL. And what we're going to do, we can get rid of our messages.add. And we're going to say ref add child event listener. And we're going to give it a new child event listener, which is going to populate a bunch of these methods. And so these methods essentially just say, notify me anytime a child is added. So anytime a new event that is of type child added is pushed on. So when someone adds something, we can go ahead and change the data in a certain way. We can add a new message. Similarly, things like onChild removed, hey, we get a message or an event that's saying, hey, we need to remove a message. We'll go ahead and remove it from messages. So it's actually really easy. We can just say messages.add, and that takes something of type message. Well, notice, hey, we got something of type data snapshot, which is the immutable data that is coming from Firebase to say, hey, this is the event data that you need to process. And we have a really nice way of converting that from a data snapshot into a model object. And that's why we had to go ahead and create the default constructor and those getters and setters. We can actually just say something data snapshot and get the value of that as a message. we can just pass the class in, and then we're going to go ahead and kind of under the hood populate a message from that data snapshot. So now we've gone ahead and added that message to our list, and we're going to go ahead and say notify dataset changed to go ahead and redraw. So with that little bit of code, we should be able to rerun and pull open this guy. And everyone cross your fingers and like knock on wood if there's anything, any wood to knock on. Or your heads, yeah. Oh, Android Studio's thinking. Yes, I want to run it in that emulator. There we go. Drum roll. There we go. Boom. We have a set of messages that I pre-populated in the Firebase. So what we're doing is we're going ahead and reading those messages in directly from Firebase. They're getting pushed down to us because they say, hey, you've added a listener, which is that subscriber, and we can now go ahead and push data down to you. So again, that's cool. Everyone, that's you guys should be clapping at that. The first part was not that interesting. This part is actually pretty cool because I wrote 0 server code to make that happen. My database is just a piece of JSON in the sky with these messages, right? 0 server code, completely client-side logic. But again, I am in the fight against Cruft and boilerplate code. So we've gone ahead and wrapped all of these up because as it turns out, the logic to go ahead and say remove messages that are the same, well, what's the same, right? There's a whole bunch of kind of interesting edge cases around how you deal with data that changes. So we've actually wrapped this whole thing up into a cool product that we're launching right now. So I'm going to demo it to you, and we're going to go ahead and everyone can go ooh and ah and wow, that's amazing. And yeah, we're launching it publicly. It's all open source, so you can check out how we did it. But let's go ahead and show you how we did that. So we're going to go back and open the module settings, go to dependencies, and we're going to add something at another library dependency called Firebase UI. So we can search for that, and hey, there it is. We'll go ahead, add that in. And what Firebase UI does is it goes ahead and provides a Firebase ListView adapter, which goes ahead and takes a ref into that adapter and will do all of the added, changed, removed, moved events so that you just go ahead and hook that directly up to your ListView. So we can go ahead and get rid of all of that code. And we're going to go ahead and change this to a Firebase ListView adapter. And it should go ahead, and if I've done everything correctly, it should be okay with that. Come on. Firebase list adapter, you're right. There we go. Yeah, I need to sync Cradle, you're right. Give it a minute. Yeah, it's there. Now it should work. There we go. Firebase list adapter. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and right after this ref, we're going to say m adapter is new Firebase list adapter. And that's going to go ahead, takes the context. Note, we also have to go ahead and make it generic because we can get rid of this array list. So this is going to go ahead and provide us things of message class into android.r.layout.simple simple list item 2, and then it's going to take that reference, and it's going to go ahead and give us one method, and that's going to give us a view, and this is going to be a message. So that's happy now, and all we have to do now is take the view, where it's guaranteed to be populated, and populate it with the message. So we can go ahead and just say view. I really shouldn't have deleted the find view by ID code because we end up having to do that exact same thing again. So let me actually copy it, undo. Oh, I won't undo that. I'll just write it, it'll be faster. Name view. and view, find view by ID, r.id.text1. We will copy that again, at risk of boring everyone. Text view, and that's text2. And then we'll just say name view dot set text, and this is message dot get name, and name view or text view dot set text message dot get text. And now we will go ahead and run this exact same thing. We can delete that. We will rerun it, and you'll see the exact same thing, assuming we've done everything correctly. So we'll go ahead, do the exact same thing. But the other thing, and I'll have to go ahead and jump over to my other window to show this. So what we're looking at here, as I kind of alluded to before, is just kind of a view into our database. Firebase is JSON, so you just see, hey, we have name, we have hello Droidcon, the text there. I'm going to go ahead, I have my console open, and I'm going to go ahead and push. So I just added a new message through our JavaScript client. You can see the message there, and you see the message that I just added. I'll go ahead and I'll add a couple of exclamation points, and you can see I changed the data, and it immediately appears over on the Android client. The other thing, I mentioned removing is hard, changing is hard. Let me go ahead, I'll add a couple exclamation points. Wow, a couple exclamation points just added in our Android app, and we wrote no code to do that. I can also delete one. So yes, I want to permanently remove it. Wow, it deleted. Again, we wrote no code. That just happens. Thank you. So for those of you who are a little inquisitive, I promised 5 lines of code, and we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But these kind of nasty things. So can we do better than this? And I'm gonna jump back to the presentation. We'll go ahead, go present. We got that. As I mentioned, we're officially launching this today. This is a screenshot of the blog post. We have it for Android and iOS, so you can develop apps on both platforms with a very similar API using very little code. Super, super easy to get started with. We definitely want feedback. As I said, it's open source. We would love contributions, feedback, anything that you guys want to give. And so this is the part now where I get to say, wait, there's s'more. And everyone hates that pun. We can go ahead and use some new features in Android Marshmallow to go ahead and reduce our code even more. So how many of you guys have heard of data binding in Android M? So a lot of you guys. Wow, then this is going to be completely trivial for you guys. We're going to go ahead and we want to get rid of these by data binding. So that's going to require a couple things. We're going to have to go ahead and create a new layout. So I will create that, and I'll just call it message view. So we got that. What I will do is I will actually, going back to MainActivity, I'm going to basically just steal it from here. I'll just copy that and then get rid of what it doesn't like. But there are a couple special things that we have to do to completely conform to what data binding wants from us. So one is having the layout. And actually, I have to go ahead and get it first. So you can go ahead and add it. You have to add one thing. You have to add the plugin. So, and I believe that's what it is. I have it open. Yeah, right there. com.android.databinding. So we've got that. And we will go ahead and do the Gradle sync. What is it not like? What did I... Sorry? No, I think yeah, that's what I need. That's the other thing, yeah. And this is why it's always fun to live code, right? You forget the things. So there we go. So that should work now. And we'll try that. And there we go. So we've got that. And now I'll quickly just run back and demo this earlier. And the main thing that we're doing is we add this special tag to the top of our view. That is, I'll delete all the cruft from a second ago. We add a data tag. And what this data tag says is it says we want to go ahead and have a data that we're going to be binding to. So, and this is called Droidcon. And it is the message class. So we're going to go ahead and bind that message class that we built and bind it to our text views. So we can actually just get rid of those. And really all we need is that. And we can, again, kind of prune down. So quickly. And then what we need to do is we actually need to do the binding. So we can say Android text, and it uses this special, if you guys have ever used handlebars, it's kind of handlebars-like syntax, the curly braces. So we're going to give it message name in there. And then we're going to go ahead and give the other one message text. Just going to quickly check my sanity. Yep, we got that. And then this all needs to get wrapped in the layout. So we'll go ahead, do that, and there we go. So, correction. Doesn't like the top layout. We don't need that. Yeah, we do need that. You're right. I'll just grab that quickly. We're running out of time. Sweet. So we've got that, and what that's going to do is that's going to go ahead and auto-generate a binding for us. So we can go back to our main activity, and here, and I've totally blanked on the name of that. Sorry. There we go. So it auto-generates the message view binding. And so that's based on the name of the view that we created. And view, I'm totally dying here. Sorry, everyone. Message item binding. Oh, sorry, message view binding.bind. And we're going to go ahead and bind that to our view that we passed in. And then we're going to go ahead and say binding.setMessage and pass our message in. And now, if we have pleased the Android M data binding gods, everyone again, cross your fingers, hopefully we have, we should see the exact same thing again, just in too few lines of code. Well, correction. Let me make sure that yeah, there we go. Got to rerun it. We will actually see something slightly different because I don't quite steal all the styles off of the two-item list view. Oh, what did I do? I broke something. Sorry? That was, oh, yeah. Sorry, I need to change this. r.id. Oh, yeah. There we go. That's what I needed to do. So I did need to change something slightly. And now that should work. Again, live coding on stage. Yeah. Doing the same thing. What does it look like? Well, it was working 20 minutes ago. Okay, we'll go ahead and leave that. I can go ahead and actually, I'll just run it over here. It's the same app. To prove that it will work. Yep, No, go back. I have too many windows open. This is what we want. To prove to everyone that it works. Come on. There we go. Got to run the thinking. There we go. So as I said, it looks a little different, but we can go ahead and, well, I can break it again. Yay, live coding. It does work though, I promise you. So a quick recap. Thing number one, live coding is always great. We learned a little bit about Firebase and RX and kind of compared and contrast. They're the same thing. That's really what it comes down to is Firebase is in its nature reactive. It is a asynchronous stream of events that we present to you in a certain way and restrict a little bit in terms of kind of the operations that you can chain off of it, but it's fundamentally very similar. We played a little code golf. We made an application and I think it ended up being about 7 lines of code. And we integrated some new Android M features with more or less success. That's always the fun of beta features, right? So if you want more, Frank, standing in the back in the yellow shirt, is going to be leading a code lab tomorrow at 2:20. And we're going to kind of learn a little bit about how we built Firebase UI. We're going to build a little app similar and really get our hands dirty building Firebase and Android apps. And then our table is right outside by the giant Cloudspin demo. We have a few t-shirts left. We have a lot of stickers. We had hot sauce. I don't know if you guys saw during the chicken nuggets. A lot of fun. Thank you guys all very much for coming. You can check out firebase.com, the Android docs. We have a quick start. We have a bunch of API docs and examples. And then also Firebase UI. Again, we'd love your feedback on it. And if there are any questions now, I can take questions for another couple minutes. Yeah. Why, yes, it does support recycler views. We have a Firebase recycler view adapter. So, good question. And the iOS version does the exact same thing. It does table views and collection views. So we can support on Android list views, grid views, recycler views, possibly even a couple more. So we're adding authentication stuff next. So standard controls for doing auth. So it's basically just going to be hit a button and you can auth with social providers, email, password, that kind of stuff. So yeah, and we're always taking feature requests and pull requests. Yes. Yeah, so the question was about if it handles all of the events as well. And so it's going to handle all of the same events in terms of adding and removing items from the recycler view. So it does stock animations right now. And then you can go ahead and override certain parts to go ahead and add your own custom animation behavior. Yeah, we tried to make intelligent and reasonable choices where we could. And then the whole goal is if you need certain additional features, just override those later. Yeah. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about how you tested
Yeah. Testing and debugging. So we have unit tests on the underlying data structures in things like Firebase UI. In terms of view testing, this is actually a great story. So Frank and I spent a bunch of time building Firebase UI, including a number of random nights and weekends. And Frank was doing the Android version, I was doing the iOS version. And I'm at home on a Saturday and programming against the iOS version, and it keeps just randomly out of nowhere crashing. And I'm like, why is this crashing? It made no sense, because I was doing absolutely nothing, and it would just throw an exception and die. And I'm like, hey, Frank, I'm seeing some really weird behavior on this. And he's like, yeah, I have no idea what that is. And it turns out that he had built a sample application that was randomly swapping rows. And so my code wasn't handling appropriate row swapping, so it would just crash. So I spent about a day wondering why my app would crash, because he left the app on his desk and running. And so it was a whole thing of kind of the Sherlock Holmes, when the improbable must be, you're left with only the facts. And the fact was that Frank had built something that was effectively a unit test against my broken code. So we try and do as much unit testing on things as we can. We're still working on dealing with integration tests. I'll do a quick plug we're part of Google. Google has Cloud Test Lab. And Cloud Test Lab is basically go ahead and test your app on various emulators and physical hardware. So that's a great way to go ahead and just kind of, hey, I'm doing a deploy. I want to know if it's broken on certain categories of devices. That's a great way of doing it. But yeah, we're definitely still working on good mobile test frameworks. I think pretty much everyone is. Yeah. So, yes. The Android one? It was just the Android M data binding. Oh, for the support library? Yeah, so it'll go back. It's in support v7 or app compat v7. Yeah, so it is backwards compatible. Yes.
When does it unbind from the ref? It's not listening.
Yeah, so we go ahead and on the Android version, you have to go ahead and explicitly call in your on destroy, you call cleanup, and that goes ahead and unbinds from the reference. On the iOS version, it just does it automatically in dialog, but Java doesn't quite have the same mechanism. So, yeah. Again, we're trying to do those things intelligently, but it's also like, well, we don't know when you kill it, so yeah. The question was when it goes ahead and unbinds from the reference to go ahead and clean that up. Cool. Well, yes, one last question, and then I'll be up here or over the table.
How do you handle the database change on the server side?
Yeah, so the question was about how Firebase handles things server-side. And essentially, we have a big in-memory cache that'll go ahead and compare the values. And then we also maintain a list of clients who are interested in those changes. So when you go ahead and do this array adapt, or the, whoopsies, wrong one. When you go ahead and do your Firebase list adapter, it goes ahead and subscribes for all of the changes below a certain location. And so our server says, hey, Mike's Android client needs to know this data. And so anytime a piece of data comes in, we maintain who we need to update. So we'll go ahead and take that piece of data, send it down to all the clients, and then we raise the events that get kind of piped out through the list adapter. So really, it is this simple on your end. You can go ahead and even create multiple different adapters to go ahead and handle different kinds of data. I could also go ahead and say, on this ref, I could do something like ref dot, this is getting a little crazy, but we can chain queries on top of our ref, so I could go ahead and say, hey, only give me the last 2 messages, for instance, and I could go ahead and kind of filter that way. So that's a little bit of reactive goodness. It is there. You can see more when we talk to Frank tomorrow, or I'm happy to talk to you right after this. So thanks again. Really enjoyed having you guys. Hopefully you guys learned something.